What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Debbie Royale YouTube channel. Today, we're doing something a little bit different. I know this channel normally sticks to Dynasty and Debbie and college football and all of those things, but I just got done finishing my projections for the 2023 season, and so I want to talk about some undervalued quarterbacks heading into fantasy football drafts this summer. Like Kevin says, you guys know what to do. I'm going to hit the intro. Make sure you like and subscribe if you are not already. Hit that bell, get notifications for the next video. We'll see you on the other side. All right, guys, like I said, we're going to be talking about some undervalued quarterbacks currently in fantasy football drafts. Just some background on this. I do projections for all 32 teams, every single offensive skill player. And so, as I was finishing these, I like to kind of reference back to ADP and where guys are going in current drafts. Now, a lot of that ADP is best ball right now. And so, you can't get a full gauge on where these guys will go in your fantasy draft as redraft season kicks around, but it's a good barometer for where the market is on a lot of these players. So I'm going to hit on five guys and let's get into it. So the first one I want to talk about, and the guy that's on the thumbnail there, Tua Tagovailoa. He is going as the QB 11. He is my QB 7 in overall points. He is my QB 6 in fantasy points per game. And a lot of that revolves around consistency. So, year two in Mike McDaniel's system, I think that's a very important thing. I think Mike McDaniel is one of the offensive geniuses that are revolutionizing the game right now. He's very creative with how he puts his quarterback in positions to succeed. Last year, Tua took advantage of that, and having Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle certainly matters. But last year, in the 11 games that he started and finished, he averaged 19.51 fantasy points per game, which over the course of a full season, that would have been good for right behind Justin Fields at QB 8. And so when you start to look at all of that, Tua last year was pretty comfortably the best deep ball thrower in the NFL from a statistics basis, from Pro Football Focus metrics, and just in terms of when you watch the film, he throws dimes down the field, and it shouldn't shock people. I think a lot of the narrative around Tua has been a little weird, and honestly, someone asked me, I tweeted out where I have Tua, and someone said, "Does this factor in the chance for a season-ending injury?" It doesn't because, I'm not going to project that. I will say this does carry a little bit more risk if you do draft him this year, simply because of the concussion stuff and the fact that he already talked about potentially retiring. But assuming full health, which I think we kind of can at this point, I think Tua is going to have a massive year. I think a top 5 quarterback is within his range of outcomes. And so when you start to factor that in at QB 11, it's just too much to pass up. I do have my projections here. I'll read some of those. So I have him projected for almost 5,000 yards in 16 games, averaging over 8 yards per attempt, 34 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, good for 23.83 points per game in 6-point touchdown. I like to project with 6-point touchdown. So for whatever it's worth, if you guys are interested in seeing my full projections, they are on the Patreon, patreon.com/the Debbie Royale. You can check out all of those. I'm only going to read the 5 here. Next guy I want to talk about, though, guy that I don't really want to talk about, but a guy that I think is going to be pretty darn good at football this year, and that's Deshaun Watson. ADP of QB 9. My ranking is QB 6. A lot of this is predicated on the roster construction that Cleveland has kind of been a roster renaissance for them. They let Kareem Hunt walk for right now, and they've added a plethora of wide receivers from Elijah Moore to Cedric Tillman in the draft to, I know it sounds silly, but Marquise Goodwin kind of highlights that they want a guy that can stretch the field vertically. They've committed to throwing the football and spreading defenses out. And a lot of the word from early stuff is that they are going to be running more 4 wide sets with just Nick Chubb in the backfield. And the days of the heavy 12 personnel might be going away because that's when Deshaun Watson was playing at a near MVP level for Houston a few years ago, they ran a spread offense and they spread it out. They let him run out of shotgun and they said, okay, go throw the ball. And he was very, very effective. There's a reason that the Browns paid all that money for a guy like Deshaun Watson. But over the last 3 weeks of last year, 17.1 fantasy points per game. That was in the top 10-ish. I think it was QB8 over that span of time. He showed signs of life despite being just very bad last year. He was just not good. A lot of that could be circumstantial. It could be the fact that he was rusty, and I think that rust did show up. But when you look at what they have done, and he's getting a full offseason with the team to master this offense, I think that's a very key piece in this. I think he's going to throw for over 4,000 yards. I think, from a yards per attempt standpoint, I think he's going to be more efficient. Maybe not as efficient as he was back in his MVP uh, discussion days, but I do think the touchdowns are going to come too. I have him projected for nearly 32 touchdowns, 18 interceptions. I do think that some of that stuff might not get fully worked out immediately, but in terms of fantasy output, he also adds a lot. They showed the willingness to go RPO stuff, and he pulled, and there were a lot of times where he was running for a lot of yards. I have him projected for over 500 yards on the ground. I think that's going to be a main component of this offense, because they do still want to run the ball, and I don't think Nick Chubb is going to carry the full load. So Deshaun Watson, good pick for fantasy. I do have him projected a little bit under Tua, clearly, but in points per game, I mean, so 22, he's the one that Tua jumps in the points per game. 22.68 fantasy points per game is what I have him projected at. Next guy, one that's pretty contentious. I know Jeff Bell on this channel is burying Geno, and there are some reasons to be concerned about this one. And I get it. So last year, he finished as QB9. He's currently going as the QB15 in drafts. I have him at QB10. They added Jackson Smith and Jigba to an already efficient passing attack. I think that's a very key component to this. And yes, they also added Zach Charbonnet. I think that matters. I think in an ideal world, they are running the ball a lot more than they did last year. But on the other side of things, their defense is only marginally better. I don't think they got significantly better. And there were times that defense was pretty porous last year. It's not good. And so I think the passing volume is still going to be required this year. I think their schedule is pretty tough. Just being in that division is tough in general. And so I'm projecting over 600 passing attempts, over 4,500 yards for Geno. I think, down the stretch, he averaged an interception per game. That's the stat I keep pulling this offseason. He averaged an interception per game over his last 8. Most of his interceptions came in the back half of last year. And I think one of the main questions this year was that because teams figured Geno out, or was that because Geno just got a little bit sloppy? I think it's a mixture of both. I think that Geno will have to improve from last year in order to achieve a QB10 finish. But I also think that that's a decently good outcome for him, simply because of how many weapons he has at his disposal now. I didn't mention the tight ends, Noah Fant, Will Disley, Colby Parkinson, but that's a pretty good stable of tight ends to add to the trio of wide receivers that honestly a lot of teams would prefer as their one. So overall, I think Geno, you might be a little more afraid to draft him, but I would say it's okay. You can draft him, especially at QB15. We're about to get into the ones that I'm like, kind of values, but, we'll talk about it. First one, Kenny Pickett, ADP of QB23, my ranking QB21. So not a huge value, but worth mentioning that I'm still projecting him to be a little bit better than where he is currently going. They added substantial help on the offensive line. They got quite a few new starters, and I think that is definitely going to matter. I think Kenny Pickett is at his best when he is comfortable in the pocket. He can do some stuff outside of structure, but I also think that pressure kind of throws him off a little bit. On the other side of things, he is a good rusher. He had over 230 yards, I think, last year. I think he's actually an efficient runner with the football. I think that could be a piece of his game that shows up a little bit this year. The NFL offense has transitioned to needing athletes at quarterback, and Kenny Pickett is a really good athlete. As much as I doubt his actual ability to be a great NFL quarterback, I do think that's going to matter for fantasy. I think he's going to eclipse 300 yards on the ground this year, and I actually have him pretty close to 400. I think that's going to be a main piece of what they do on offense as well. And then just second year leap stuff. I expect some marginal growth, maybe not the best growth that you'd like to see. I I think back to, it's funny, his teammate Mitchell Trubisky, are those two are similar in my eyes in that Mitchell Trubisky was a pretty good player there for a second, and I think that we're entering the pretty good season for Kenny Pickett. Najee Harris should be healthy this year. I think a wide receiver trio of Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, and Allen Robinson is a little better than what they had last year after they traded Chase Claypool. And then Pat Freiermuth and Darnell Washington offer enough. And don't sleep on Calvin Austin to slice out a roll, I think, maybe a little one. So for Kenny Pickett, I have him projected under 4,000 yards, 20 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. But like I said, almost 400 yards on the ground, 17 points per game. Honestly, if you're in like single quarterback leagues, he's not worth the pick. But if you're playing in super flex leagues, even in redraft, I think that he is a little bit of a value here. And the final guy, I couldn't get out of this video without talking about him, but Trey Lance. Trey Lance is going as quarterback 27. I have him ranked up at QB 18. There is a chance that Trey Lance takes the starting job and never gives it back. And if so, he is going to be the best pick in fantasy football drafts. The other side of things, and obviously this is where it's kind of up in the air right now. If he does give the job back, it's probably Brock Purdy's, and Trey Lance probably is a backup for this year. I don't think they trade him in season. And so this is a risky one, but I project that Trey Lance is going to take that job and he's never going to give it back. In terms of what he can offer for fantasy football, we've already seen it. The rushing upside will put him in contention for weekly top 12 performances. That is 100% in his outcomes. I think almost 500 rushing yards. I haven't projected at just 15 games. I do think he plays 15 games. Now, this is the one where you guys can come back and say, you're an idiot. It was Brock Purdy's job all along. I get it. This one's certainly, sticking my neck out for a guy that I believed in pre-draft, a guy I don't think anyone should not believe in, simply because we just don't have a big enough sample size. But the Shanahan quarterback, no matter what, produces. And so on the other side of things is like, if you aren't a Trey Lance believer and you say, well, I think Brock Purdy is, Brock Purdy's going right before Trey Lance in drafts, and that is an extreme value. So I guess what I'm here to say is whichever one of those guys you believe will be the starter, and if you're able to wait a little bit until you kind of know more information on that, then just go get the Shanahan quarterback. It's not a bad idea to double tap them at the very back of your draft. Obviously, you'd kind of hope to have a better quarterback earlier in the draft, but having the Kyle Shanahan quarterback has been fine for fantasy, especially if it's, once again, a super flex league, QB2 stuff. And then in terms of points per game, I actually have Lance ranked higher than QB 18. I have him up near the top 12 because I do think that if he plays and if he plays a full season, he is going to produce. That's simply what his skill set offers. And so those are the 5. I do, I feel pretty confident about the first 3, and then the last 2 are the ones that, like, if you aren't with me, I get it. I 100% get it, but I'm offering you guys some info that I hope can help you in your fantasy drafts when they roll around. I know it's June, it's almost time for those fantasy drafts. I know some leagues are drafting here soon, which is exciting. We love that. If you wait until training camp time and that's when you're seeing this video, I hope this is all relevant information still. So until next time, thank you guys for watching. Once again, if you want more content, most of it's college football, Devy, Dynasty related, but we do have a ton of stuff over at the Patreon, patreon.com/the Devy Royale. And as always, this episode or this video is presented by Underdog Fantasy. Use that code in the description to get a 100% deposit match up to $100. It's a great value. You can't beat it. And Underdog best ball drafts are fun. It kind of passes the time while you're waiting for your redraft league. So thank you guys for watching once again. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you did not already, and we'll talk to you guys next time.